na muna ito.
We begin tonight with a big number, 35 million. That's the new number of vaccinations we need to achieve herd immunity, at least according to new calculations by OCTA Research.
The good news is that's just half of the original target of 70 million. But the challenge, 75% of Metro Manila residents should be inoculated. Good evening, I'm Gretchen Ho.
And I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. Let's start with experts now suggesting to vaccinate a majority of Metro Manila's population first to achieve herd immunity.
Doing so, says the OCTA Research Group, would cut herd immunity population by half. Greg Gregorio has the big story.
The country might achieve herd immunity sooner than expected. That at least is according to the OCTA Research Group. From the regional estimate of 70% of the population at 70 million, that may be trimmed to 35 million or 33% of the population. But as they told the chiefs, there is a catch. This number should include 75% of Metro Manila's population.
If we could get sufficient, maybe 5 million, 3 to 5 million vaccines in the NCR, malaking matutulong yan. Especially since NCR is the highest risk, it's also the economic center, and everything else goes through the NCR. So if we can control the surge in the NCR, and if we can prevent outbreaks in the NCR, essentially we'll be almost preventing outbreaks in other regions.
Herd immunity is when enough members of a community is immunized so that a virus is no longer able to spread. According to OCTA, this is easier to achieve in some regions like Bicol and Ilocos, both barely touched by the virus. These areas, David said, could afford to inoculate even just 20% of their population. The health department will look into OCTA's study. The agency said there is no certainty yet as to when herd immunity will be achieved, given the lack of supply and the lack of study on how long a vaccine provides protection.
And our basic objective is for us to reduce deaths. Kaya nga po, ang ating prioritization is based on the vulnerable. If you vaccinate these individuals and mauna sila, maprotektahan natin sila, it can avert this number of deaths in the population.
For News 5, Greg Gregorio, we are One News.
Now, does this make sense? Is herd immunity more within reach if a majority of Metro Manila gets inoculated? To discuss, we have Dr. Maria Consorcia Lim Quizon of the National Immunization Technical Advisor Group, or NITAG. Good evening, Dr. Conky.
Good evening, Robbie.
Now, Doc, I think the main point of OCTA, beyond trying to peg a number, is basically, let's focus on Metro Manila. We have limited resources in vaccination, but they're saying, look, there may be a strategy, not necessarily just to stretch that, but to make it most efficient. Does it make sense to try to focus on inoculating as many residents within Metro Manila first?
As many of those who are most vulnerable. We have to tag that most vulnerable because we're still short of vaccine. We don't have enough. And so we really have to prioritize. And there's no discrepancy with what OCTA is saying, because this is what NITAC recommended, really, that aside from the priority groups, we can prioritize also according to the geographic area, which has the most burden of disease. And in this instance, it is NCR.
Okay, so it makes sense. And as you said, wala namang incompatibility with existing strategies. So with that, let's go to the other basic question. Are we on track? And what are your major concerns, if any, right now on the vaccination program?
Okay, the number one strategy that is being told us is when we start to roll out, it should be the most expedient, the most number of people and the fastest possible time. And unfortunately, even though the LGUs are preparing, kanya-kanya silang diskarte on how they can really make this expedient, where are the vaccines? The vaccines have to come.
Mm. Okay, maraming salamat, Dr. Conky. That was Dr. Maria Consorcia Limquizon of the National Immunization Technical Advisory Group. The death of a curfew violator in Cavite made global headlines after he was supposedly forced to do 300 body pumps by local police. Did this cause some changes in punishment for quarantine violators? The answer in this report by mobile journalist Benjo Gutierrez.
Darren Peñaredondo died after authorities made him do 300 rounds of pumping exercise as a punishment on violating curfew protocols. He did not disclose his health condition before doing the punishment. The next day, his body got weak and suffered from convulsion, and we know what happened next. It got me thinking what barangay tanods do with curfew violators. Why don't we see for ourselves? I roamed with the tanods of Barangay Hagonoy, Taguig. And welcome on tonight's episode of What's Your Palusot. Okay, violator number 1 got caught while buying cigarettes from a sari-sari store. Tanods caught him the first time, so it's fine. He just wrote his name on the logbook and said bye. But his palusot?
Ito lang po, natuso lang po.
Violator number 2 was caught while walking on a dark alley. He is not wearing any face mask, so we can see on his face, he is unhappy. It is his first offense too, and his palusot?
Sumilip lang po. Sumilip lang? Ano spell lang, pre?
Our third violators got caught gambling in front of a lamay. They couldn't think of any palusot, and the first who covered her face was Nanay. The tanods told them to stop and go inside their bahay. They were not apprehended by the barangay. It's a gesture of sympathy because someone died. These kids could have been caught, but they were faster compared to the barangay tanods. A simple warning was given to those who violated the curfew protocols the first time, alongside with writing their names on the logbook. But if they were caught the second time, as per the barangay kagawad, they will stay on these spaces. And they will be fined with community service.
Pero walang community service na ipapay yung push up, yung mga ganun, wala ano lang. Walis ng paligid ng court, yung harapan ng barangay outpost ng simbahan, wawalisin lang. Tapos, pag nakawalong oras na sila, i-orient ng team leader, then pakakawalan.
This kind of punishment was also suggested by DOJ Secretary Menardo Guevara.
Community service now for those who will continue to violate our ordinances.
I'm Benjo Gutierrez. We are One News.
These are the other big stories tonight. More encouraging signs that the ECQ might be working. Infectivity rate is expected to slide to 1.2 by Sunday. But before that happens, the country just logged its highest single-day fatality count due to COVID-19. Chinese vessels chased off a boat carrying a Filipino TV crew. The Defense Department now wants to look into the incident. And with the price cap on pork already lifted today and import tariff on pork made lower, the price of local meat varieties has already started to increase. And the Buckingham Palace announces the death of Prince Philip at 99. These big stories after the break.
You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay. COVID deaths have reached a new record today. 401 succumbed to the virus, more than half of whom were reclassified. Active infections also reached new highs at 178,000. After 12,225 were infected, that is the third highest count to date. This brings total case count to more than 840,000. But there are encouraging figures as well to prove that recent lockdowns might be taking effect. According to the OCTA Research Group, the country's infection rate, or R0, may dip to below 1.2 by Sunday. That is the country's R0 just before the start of the surge. The R0 refers to the number of people a COVID-positive person will likely infect. A reading above 1 indicates that the virus is still spreading. The OCTA Group prefers that lockdown continues next week, but probably at a more relaxed manner. Metro Manila mayors are expected to reach a consensus within the day on their recommendation for the quarantine status of the NCR Plus bubble. The IATF is set to decide on Saturday whether to extend the enhanced community quarantine in NCR and nearby provinces. In an interview with One News, MMDA Chairman Benher Abalos said NCR mayors will base the recommendation on the status of hospitals in their localities. He added that many facilities are still at high-risk capacity. Despite this, Abalos believes the 2-week ECQ has somewhat helped to reduce the COVID-19 reproduction rate, and if it were up to him, he will recommend a more lenient quarantine starting next week. Parañaque Mayor and Metro Manila Council Chair Edwin Olivares earlier said he is also in favor of reverting to MECQ. He cites the low number of new cases in his city.
This has always been calibrated with what's happening with the hospitals now, because the main reason why we had this ECQ is because our ICU, our hospitals are full right now. Personally, for me, probably a much lower than what we have right now.
The Food and Drug Administration says AstraZeneca's vaccine can still be administered to the elderly, even if the government has suspended its use on the younger population. FDA Director General Eric Domingo says the rare blood clotting incidents in Europe were only observed on those aged below 60. Domingo notes that senior citizens are at the highest risk of getting infected with COVID-19 and thus stand to benefit the most from getting inoculated.
Clotting and with thrombocytopenia was not seen in people 60 and above. So yung mga in-investigate na cases are actually in people below 60. Kahit naman yung ngayon na sinabi natin refrain from using, hindi naman natin yan ililimit.
These are the other big stories tonight. As the country commemorates the Day of Valor, key government officials call for unity among Filipinos in battling the COVID-19 pandemic. In the statement, President Duterte honors those in the front lines of the pandemic response. Vice President Leni Robredo, meanwhile, says this day gives hope to Filipinos that the country can overcome even the darkest of times through hope and sacrifice. Former President and Manila Mayor Joseph Estrada, or ERAP, is responding well to his treatment. His son and ex-Senator Jinggoy says that ERAP has been taken off ventilator support as his condition continues to improve. ERAP tested positive for COVID-19 and has been hospitalized since March 28. Another incident happened in the West Philippine Sea involving China's vessels. This time, it pursued a Filipino boat carrying a television crew. ABS-CBN News reporter Shara Zambrano said they were supposed to go to Ayungin Shoal, but China ships immediately chased them away. Defense spokesperson Arsenio Andolong has since directed the AFP through its Western Command to investigate the incident. Let's pause for another quick break. More big stories when we come back. Keep news.
Welcome back. I'm Robbie Alampay. You're still watching The Big Story. With the price ceiling on pork already lifted, imported pork is becoming cheaper, but local varieties have become more expensive. But not all retailers are keen on selling imported meat. Shaila Francisco explains.
Cheaper imported pork and more expensive local pork. This is the situation in Metro Manila markets today, with the price ceiling already lifted. Prices of frozen kasim and liempo are well within the suggested retail price of imported pork, but fresh local pork have gotten more expensive. From 305 pesos, sabit ulo is now worth 310 pesos per kilo at the Muñoz market. While kasim is still 370 at most, liempo is now 400 pesos per kilo, a 10 peso increase.
Tuloy-tuloy na siguro to, mahirap na magbenta ngayon
Retailers expect prices to increase even further, while dealers fear that imported pork will soon dominate markets.
Magsisip na kami lahat sa frozen meat. Wala nang bibili ng local hubs natin.
While it may be significantly cheaper, not everybody is keen on frozen pork. It also comes with more requirements. The Agriculture Department has ordered importers to pack kasim and liempo into sealable packages of 500 grams and 1 kilo. Importers and retailers find this daunting.
Pinapatagtad nila, pinapa-slice, pinapahiwa ng pang-menudo, pang-strip, ganon. So kung pack-pack na siya ng kalakalating kilo, hindi rin...
Marami po. Lalakad ka muna sa City Hall, kukuha ka ng mga ganyan. Kaya yun po. Marami po. Wala na sa freezer, kailangan pa rin po namin.
The DA said it allocated 45 million pesos for freezers in wet markets. It also assured the public of ample local supply. The agency vowed to assist hog raisers and dealers in transportation so they may bring the products to the capital. They will also be given incentives.
We considered everything. Ang approve po natin na MAB Plus ay doon lang sa deficiency natin itong taon gawa ng African swine fever.
For the meantime, the DA will deploy inspection teams in markets to monitor prices, supply, and quality of the pork products being sold. Shaila Francisco, VR1 News.
Here are the other big stories on print and online. From the Philippine Star, Richard Cambe, former chief of staff of Senator Bong Revilla, has died while serving his sentence for plunder. Revilla said Cambe suffered a stroke Wednesday night but was not immediately admitted to a hospital due to overcapacity. Cambe was convicted in the PDAF scam masterminded by Janet Lim Napoles, but Revilla was acquitted in the case. From Business World, the Philippines' gross domestic product, or GDP, performed worse in 2020 than previously reported. The Philippine Statistics Authority said the country's GDP fell by a record 9.6%, slightly faster than the initially reported 9.5%. The country's gross national income also declined by 11.4%, adjusted from the earlier estimate of 11.1%. And this from News 5, interbank ATM transactions will now cost more with a new Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas policy taking effect. ATM cardholders who will withdraw from the ATMs of other banks will be charged up to 18 pesos. Balance inquiry will cost as much as 2 pesos and 50 centavos. BSP Governor Benjamin Joclo says the new ATM fees will help banks recover some expenses while also pushing them to install more ATMs, especially in rural areas.
Britain's Prince Philip, husband of Queen Elizabeth II, has died at the age of 99. In a statement, Buckingham Palace said the Duke of Edinburgh passed away peacefully at Windsor Castle. The cause of his death has yet to be disclosed. His passing comes 3 weeks after the prince was discharged from a London hospital due to an infection. Prince Philip married into the royal family in 1947. He retired from public duties in 2017. He was the longest-serving consort of any British royal in history, serving the Queen for more than 6 decades.
For the big story in sports, volleyball superstar Jaja Santiago has been offered naturalization in Japan by her current club team, Anew. This is just one of the many feats she has so far achieved in her successful career. But what else is lined up for her? Let's watch this. This 250 square meter two-story house is the latest victory of Philippine volleyball star Jaja Santiago. It's just about 70% complete, but the 6'5" middle blocker says it's been a dream come true building a house for her family. The designer, another volleyball player, Jessie De Leon.
Last year, bago ako umuwi dito galing din Japan, parang sabi ko, kailangan kong mag-invest para sa future ko. Jessie, pag nagpatayo ako ng bahay or nagkaroon ako ng condo, gusto ko ikaw yung magde-design nung bahay ko.
No stranger to the hard knock life, Jaja has been her family's breadwinner at a young age, together with sister and Cherry Tigo middle blocker Dindin Santiago.
Parang nangangarap lang kami dati na makapaglaro ng volleyball, makapag-aral, makapagtapos. Hindi namin in-expect tong achievement ni Jaja na ganito.
Alam din naman kasi ng yung pinagdaanan namin sa pamilya. Proud ako as a mom kasi lumaki silang ganyan, responsable. Narating nila yung dream nila.
And dream come true it is. Jaja just became the first Filipino volleyball player to win an international championship in her stint with the Anew for the Japan V-League. This despite the club team having a rehashed lineup, including a new Brazilian coach. Their key to victory? Tons of discipline, something she hopes to take home.
Meron kaming app na ginagamit para i-scout din yung mga player. Tsaka makita mo rin sa sarili mo kung ano yung mga kailangan mong itama.
Being an important piece in their gold medal run, Jaja says that she has been offered naturalization in Japan.
50-50 actually. Magstay ako doon for until age of 28. Yun yung pinaka-longest na procedure. Ako kasi syempre, ang dream ko, gusto maglaro Olympics, di ba? So sabi ko, kung kukunin ko yung opportunity na yun, sobrang madali, hindi madali, pero mas may step na ako, mas malapit na ako dun sa makalaro sa Olympics pag ginarab ko yung opportunity na yun, kaysa dito sa atin.
But no matter her choice, her family and coaches are behind her 100%.
Sinabi naman niya na gusto kong i-share muna yung sa Philippine volleyball na Gusto niya kasing kahit papaano iangat yung natin level ng sa volleyball natin dito sa Pilipinas.
Alam ko na hindi niya i-accept yun.
Let's not also deny the fact that we have a long way to go. So I think it's her dream also to compete and to play in the Olympics. So for me, I'll just support her whatever her decision would be.
Jaja will definitely take her learnings to the Philippine court when the maiden professional season of the Premier Volleyball League begins. Anong alam mo Japanese word? Sige nga, subukan mo.
Nijo gozaidesu. Ayun. Tapos, yan, Sokoshi, Kawaii. Ako si Jaja Santiago, 25 years old.
Gretchen Hall, we are One News.
The wife of former Gilas Pilipinas player Gio Halalon airs their dirty laundry. Christina accuses her husband of infidelity and domestic violence. Her Instagram stories are filled with screenshots proving the supposed adultery, like plans to meet with another woman before Valentine's Day. To an anonymous sender who allegedly has steamy video calls with her husband. She also claims being hit by the 5'9" Magnolia Hotshots point guard many times. Gio has yet to respond, but the couple tied the knot in 2019. They have 2 children. For News 5, MJ Marfori, we are One.
Yesterday, we saw a centenarian from Las Piñas calmly receiving COVID-19 jab without hesitation. It was a very different case for a health official in Indonesia. The mere sight of the injection had Awaluddin Rahim screaming at the top of his lungs. In a viral video, the Bone District Health Center official had to be restrained by his colleagues who had an earful of Rahim's shouting. Rahim obviously has had a fear of needles since childhood, but he eventually conquered this fear and now encourages everybody to get vaccinated. Oh.
Hinahamon ko po ang lahat ng mga Pinoy na ipakita ang kanilang kagitingan.
No, pero yan ang ibig sabihin ng kagitingan. Okay lang matakot as long as you can conquer your fear and eventually you do the right thing.
There you go, well said. It's all in the mind. Well, that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again on Monday at Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph.
Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines.
And stay negative, be positive. Kaya natin to. Ako po si Robbie Alampay.
Ako naman si Gretchen Mo, maligayang araw po ng kagitingan. We are One News. Have a good evening.